Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm your host, Smooth Caramel, and I talk about rap, so that's what I'm gonna do. Do y'all remember that first song that really made you feel some kind of way? The type of song that had you looking out the window of a bus or a car, just pondering life and its implications, or maybe reevaluating events from your past? Basically anything that made you feel like you're in your own music video or movie. I hope that I'm not the only one that has these kinds of moments. I'm not sure which song for me would have been the very first, but the one with the clearest memory and reaction would be a song called Clock with No Hands. Now this song is on the album Game Theory by The Roots near the end of it. And when I was growing up, since I always lived quite far from school, I developed a bit of a routine for checking out new albums on a journey. All this time on public transport is actually how I garnered this stage named Treks. Most albums being somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half meant that my 2 hour travel time was more than enough to try out a new album and then play my favourites from it on repeat towards the tail end of my journey. And I would then subject my mother or father to them endlessly once I arrive home. Or once they arrive home, because I would normally get home before that. The album stands out above most for me when it comes to my childhood, particularly on that emotional level. I can still remember that feeling of hearing it for the first time on the bus, after the train, that I got after the first bus, before the second. This song especially resonated for me because of the more melancholic state of mind that I'd been enduring at this point in my life. I really felt it. Black Thought had his characteristic, meticulous flow and lyrics and a very relatable delivery. He really knows how to imbue that feeling of pain and fatigue, then accentuated by that distinctively rugged voice. All of that is expertly accompanied by a beautifully cold yet emotive beat. I particularly like that glockenspiel-esque addition to the piano, which triggers some kind of a feeling of nostalgic youthful bliss. Quite the juxtaposition. This all brought together by soft, deceptively unrefined vocals on the chorus, and it has such a simple yet haunting meaning and tone. Still hits me in the feels to this day just hearing the opening bars to the instrumental. I'm sure there's a song out there that left a similar impact on you as well. And I low-key enjoy stumbling across these songs for new friends that I might make, because it always gives you some interesting insight into people when you find the songs that are particularly emotional or emotionally resonant for them. I feel like the friends that I have that know me best then also know the songs that make me feel some kind of way. And maybe they'll even know why. But I digress. Now, I am an emotional motherfucker. Maybe not the most visibly so, unless there's some real emotional highs or lows, or I'm especially engaged in something. I usually appear ambiguously neutral. Could be working out what to cook, thinking of some lyrics, plotting revolution, and it effectively looked the same as when I'm taking a With that being the case, internalizing emotions is a common phenomenon for me, and it can be either toxic or productive depending on how it's handled. And for as long as I've been old enough to choose my own music, I've been diving into it to help with the processing of all of these complicated emotions. And hip hop is some of the best for it. For me and for many others, no doubt. Now, rap has always had some kind of an emotional realm or component. And if we're relating to the mainstream, in those late 90s and early 2000s, you got a somewhat abrupt rise in what rap critic coined the thugs need love songs, which you could say arguably opened the gates a little bit. Although those were mostly for the ladies, because only ladies had emotions in the early 2000s. Albums have always had a fair amount of variety, which allowed for more depth and explanation in places, but I feel like back in the day you had more songs that were, say, struggle-based experiences with less actual exploration of these emotional layers. Songs about hardships and life-based struggles have always appeared. I love songs like Brenna's Got a Baby and Part-Time Mother by Tupac, but these were more on the facilitating of sensations relating to the stories that are being depicted. I would sum up as saying that these were more expressive as opposed to explorational or analytical. As a listener, you're generally more able to respond emotionally to what's being described as opposed to exploring what's being shown through any level of emotional vulnerability. These days, there's less stigma and more openness when it comes to the full range of emotions to be explored. You can see songs that explore things like traumatic experiences, smaller scale personal conflicts, or even just personal ruminations. This seems to be a product of change that occurred over time. An example being rappers that normally portray personas that are more gangster. You saw glimpses of personal weaknesses or internal conflict with songs by artists such as DMX. He had songs like Slippin' or the Damien Trilogy, or one of my personal favourites, The Professional, all with DMX's signature character and intensity which forcefully immerse you into the psyche and the story of the song's content, usually including some internal conflicts around performing ill deeds that go against the often religion-founded morality. Similarly, the breakout of Eminem around that time showed comparable fallibility with intensity, gripping you in with an almost morbid curiosity around the unfiltered, uncontrolled, and borderline manic emotional heights. But alongside that came an emerging presence of songs including subject matter and expression resembling something of emotional vulnerability from rappers in the mainstream. What is this? Kid Cudi with an album like Man on the Moon, Kanye's 808s and Heartbreaks, Kendrick's Good Kid, Mad City hit the mainstream with a different overall tonal composition. And of course, man like Drake being Drake. The most common rap on the radio or in the clubs tended to be within that hyper-masculine brag rap category, which when it's done is enjoyable and I love it, as many do. It's funny that a premise which is essentially, I rap this well, listen to me rap well about rapping well, is the musical staple that it is today. Is there a parallel in another genre? I can't imagine people singing about how well that they sing. But if there is, then I would definitely want to know, so someone tell me. Okay, somewhat sidetracked there. Beyond that, plenty of flexing, usually within the realm of money or sexual desirability, with examples like the aforementioned Thugs Need Love songs. Then what felt like in a second, people are making bank from songs just about being upset and emotional. A lot of it just sounds like high schoolers mad at the fact that emotions exist or shouting them out like they're the first ones to discover them. Low-key, Todd in the Shadows reference there. Yo, Smooth Caramel here. Small disclaimer, any resemblance to the points made in this video to a part of Todd in the Shadows video that I will link in the description are unintentional, but I am a fan of his work, so it's possible that I was unconsciously influenced a bit here, so yep, check that for reference, otherwise I shall proceed. I'm genuinely astounded by how the state of emotional rap has shifted so drastically and so quickly. Thinking about it, I can see how the growth and development of rap and hip hop has come as a product of the climate that's been created over such a long period of time. Not even to mention external factors like geopolitical upheaval and a massive economic crash. A persistent age of hypermasculinity to a toxic degree in many places, then existing alongside a cultural shift on how mental health or gender roles and the like are interacted with, made the landscape particularly ready for rappers to get soft and show some vulnerability. Even if you ignore a number of the non-musical factors, years of one thing makes the opposite stand out, and novelty is a powerful marketing tool in the world of entertainment. I'm particularly intrigued into how it's been incorporated into songs, as well as how these songs have become further reaching and more popular or successful. The initial observation that made me want to start writing this video was that the rap songs that were a part of my playlist for when I'm feeling some kind of a way, more often than not, tended to fall within that category of emotional rap that came out in the mid to late noughties. Even the ones from bigger artists that are still working today, there were songs that were from this window of time. Despite the real surge in popularity for this kind of rap arguably emerging in those early 2010s, I'm starting to wonder whether this mid-2000s to early 2010s period was a bit more of a transition period or possibly a phase, somewhat symptomatic of a cultural shift within the subculture. The Thugs Need Love phenomenon itself was largely a product of rap's convergence with R&B. So it seems like the state of emotional rap, or whatever you want to call it, was a bit of an inevitable product of all of these contributing factors that I've already discussed. I love writing these. I end up coming to revelations for stuff that I didn't even intend to when I started. Regardless, the power of the emotionally heavy and explorational rap is and was undeniable. Lyrics and production are especially compelling within the subgenre because these are the characteristics that set the tone and the vibe, as well as guide the listener through it. Of course, you have your minor keys production-wise as common foundations with your more muted and colder production. This is especially effective for the more dreary or anhedonic of subject matters, with the option for including more chaotic and expressive blasts to connect with the more visceral heights within the emotional spectrum. The vigorous drumming and cymbal crashes of Pharoah Monch's calculated amalgamations come to mind when I'm thinking about how this type of production could be utilized. It really captures that tone of emotions exploding from the brink. Lyrically, this is where you'll encounter the more poetic songs from the genre. The more understated production naturally means that the vocals are going to be more prominent, and as such, the lyrics themselves will occur and be perceived more prominently. The best of rappers use this to their advantage. Literary techniques such as metaphors and symbolisms are used in conjunction with an authentic and emotive delivery, which can fully immerse and encapsulate a listener within the emotional realm that's being depicted. But why is this such a powerful corner of the rap world? Well, for one thing, as humans, we for the most part have to deal with the whole emotions thing, and when trying to deal with them, music, as I stated before, is a very useful recourse. Relatability in particular is key, which I've actually outlined as a key appeal of rap in The Appeal of Rap video. And yeah, so since we as humans are social creatures, we don't like to be alone and do find some solace in sharing people that have experienced what we've experienced firsthand. And with the music, we can relate to the artists that make it, the people that we share it with, and the subsequent community that it forms. I hope people can relate to this, and I'm not just out here in my emotions with my headphones on public transport on my own. That could be. Some useless trivia about me. I used to be known in high school for always having headphones on, because those were my reclusive days. I don't know why I said that like my reclusive days ended. My most reclusive days. Now, on to the more obscure. Now, the first song that I want to tell people about is Shad, At the Same Time. This song is probably the most emotionally resonant for me that I've ever listened to. I spoke about Clock with No Hands because it was the first, but this one I will remember to the most minute detail what it was like listening to it, because of the way that the subject matter was explored and how personally relevant it felt to me. The overall sentiment it talks about is laughing and crying at the same time after some personal revelations. And me in particular, I don't cry very much, but when I'm on my emotional heights, I laugh. Sometimes uncontrollably or hysterically. And kind of lining up with those emotional parallels somewhat hit me emotionally when I heard that song. It still haunts me. It still feels amazing and terrible when I listen to it. It makes me feel so many things. And I'm so glad that I found the song, and I'm very angry that it's not on Spotify. So if anybody worth Spotify or can get licensing or whatever, fix it. I want it in my playlist. Okay, the next song I would recommend would be Ghost Poet's Cash and Carry Me Home, which is a lot simpler. It captures a more anhedonic tone. For me, the most relatable line that I kind of will never forget is reading books and taking tests won't take away the pain in chest. For me, as someone that feels somewhat resentful towards the overall education system, that line was nice to hear so that I didn't feel alone in that feeling. And the last one would be Don't Forget 'Em by Consequence, which is basically a song about the need to not forget those that have been there for you and that are close to you, as well as somewhat pointing out the fear of being forgotten. Okay, it's been cool, but I think this is where I have to say that this has been another Smooth Caramel production. Peace.